It's week 15, day 97 of my full-time chronic pain rehabilitation journey. I'm Jason, and today I'm going to talk about how to live your life to the fullest. I have a hint. It involves owning your own identity. First, though, a quick status update. This is by far the roughest patch of my chronic pain rehabilitation journey that I've experienced so far. There are two reasons. One, sleep deprivation. The other, a new therapy that my physical therapist is doing on my back. In terms of sleep, it's very fitful, completely inconsistent. It's like my body has forgotten how to sleep on its own without medication. And so I am really struggling to adapt and going through my days pretty sleep deprived and not faring all that well. In terms of the manipulation the physical therapist is doing, it is now at a grade 4. The highest is grade 5, which means they're applying a lot of pressure to my middle back, and it predictably hurts. We knew it was going to hurt, but we believe it's necessary to restore full function, so we're doing it. But the two together make this part of the journey the worst I've experienced. When I just got done with my chronic pain coping group today, my wife came out, my wife's like, "You're sweating." And she's like, "Why are you sweating?" I'm like, "Because I had to sit and stand during the group, and I couldn't control my pain level completely." It's been really rough. However, I'm reframing all of this because I have this hope that at some point in the future, these things will abate. I will be sleeping well, my pain level will go down. I have reasons to believe this because it would be really freakish if my sleep didn't re-regulate at some point. It may take another month, but it's going to do it. And my pain has tended to decrease with this new therapy over time. However, when they up the ante and increase the grade, the pain goes back up, which kind of makes sense. We're pushing harder than we were before, so it should go back up. So I feel like the trend is heading towards less pain, and time will tell. On to the topic of the day, how to live life to the fullest. Well, the main impediment is the human brain. It resists change, and the more change that you do, the more uncomfortable it feels and the more it wants to go back to what you were doing before. So the question is, how do you work with it? I have two analogies I've collected from my YouTube viewing. One comes from David Goggins. He's an elite performance athlete, and he describes it as a governor module. It's a speed regulator in a car. So if the top speed that a car allows is 90 miles an hour and you try to go faster, you top out at 90 degrees. It won't let you go any higher. So if you push yourself beyond that, it doesn't matter. You're going to go back to that predefined setting. You can't get past it. The other analogy comes from Millet, and he uses a thermostat analogy. So if you have a pre-programmed thermostat, even if you change the heat, for example, up, you go from 75 degrees to 90, it's going to go back to 75 degrees at some point because that's its default state. That's where it wants to live. And I think Ed's analogy is better of the two because thermostats, everybody knows what those are. Pretty much everybody has one, whereas a governor module is kind of obscure and not everybody knows what that is. Running with the thermostat analogy, it has a predefined program. So when you hit 10 o'clock, it's going to go to a certain temperature. So for example, if you've set it to 75, even if you've tweaked the temperature up or down before that point, it will always go back to 75. And that's a pretty good analogy for how the human brain works. And to live more fully, you have to figure out how to hack that program. You have to know how to work the controls of the brain to go in and change the presets in a way that it will accept. And then you'll have the ability to essentially up the temperature of your life, live more fully, and achieve what you want. The key to doing this has everything to do with your identity. And I suspect most of us have not chosen our identity to the extent that we can. We have allowed others to do it, or we came with a sort of default identity that we grew up with. It's kind of part of our subconscious, and we haven't consciously chosen that. It's just something we have. And so we have to realize that we have some power here. We can actually change our identity. And so you can essentially choose which parts of yourself you want to identify with, because all of us have some good parts and bad parts, but a lot of us just fixate on the bad parts, especially people with chronic pain. And all of this comes together, this identity becomes a story. Essentially, you tell yourself a story about you. And most people don't even realize they're doing this. It's just a story that's been defined, it's been repeated and etched into their mind, and they live in that story without ever challenging it, without ever specifically choosing what they're going to identify with in themselves. And the revelation for me was I can change what I identify with. I can change the story that I've been living in if I'm conscious about it. It takes a lot of effort, and at first it feels completely almost inauthentic, but over time it has actually worked. I am starting to feel like I am a different person. I am changing my identity. And so I would like to encourage you to not accept the defaults or externally imposed identity that you might have, and challenge the story that you've perhaps subconsciously crafted for yourself. Get rid of that toxic identity and craft a better, new one. There are 2 keys to a successful identity makeover. The first is the amount of effort you will expend to make your life better is directly tied to how much you value yourself, how much you think you're worth. You will not expend all the effort that you could if you do not like yourself, if you do not think you are worth it. And so every person has to essentially recraft their identity and the narrative they have about themselves so that they believe they have worth and that they're worth fighting for to the fullest. And this isn't just a matter of doing some mental gymnastics. I actually have a couple of methods for you to make this possible. One is psychedelics. Psychedelics for me allowed me to see a version of myself, an unburdened version of myself that I wanted to be. And it also helped me discover some attributes about myself that I actually liked, that were credible, that I could latch onto, that I could identify with. So psychedelics is one avenue to pursue to get to where you might actually find yourself to be of sufficient value to fight for your life. The other is you can, if you sit back, you can actually and think about this, you can discover and identify with positive attributes that you have. But the point is, everybody has something good about themselves, and you can choose to identify with that good or not, or fixate on the bad. It's your choice. The second key is picking the most effective strategy for you. I have 2 of them, one from David Goggins and one from Ed Millets. The first, the Goggins method, is something I would call small tweaks. So you just make small little incremental changes to the thermostat, up a couple degrees, and the thermostat, being the brain, tolerates that better than large changes. And so that's the positive. You can make small incremental changes over time. The negative is it takes a long time for you to see the results of your efforts, and so a lot of people will give up if they don't see big changes in their lives. But again, the thermostat resists those. So on to the second method, which is Ed Millets. I call this the big leaps method. So Ed recommends going basically psycho and putting all of your energy into something you want to change for at least 30 days. The thermostat hates this. This is a negative. It does not like that, and it's going to fight back really hard against you. And so it requires a lot more effort, a lot more resilience to sustain that sort of effort. The positive is if you do that, you're going to see some serious, credible results in a short amount of time. You don't have to wait as long. And so you have to decide which of those strategies will work best for you. I like Goggins' approach, again, because it's simpler, incremental. If you have a longer-term vision for yourself and you can wait it out, it will work. It's guaranteed to work, but the question is, can you wait that long? But I really like Ed Millets' version, and the reason I favor it for me is this whole journey for me is essentially a big leap. I'm doing what he said, only I've done it for 90 days, actually over 90 days now, not just 30. I have a lot of evidence that I can do hard things for a sustained period of time. Therefore, I'm more likely to do that for me. But getting started, look at your history and assess your own psychology. Which of those approaches work best for you, and pick that one. Fighting for your life means living life to the fullest. You won't expend the necessary energy until you truly believe you're worth it. If you find my videos helpful, please pass them along and don't forget to subscribe. And until next time, keep fighting for your life.